Hello and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. So today we are going to get into our very first grade 4 level piece of repertoire, and it's a piece called Returning Home by Gretchaninov. This is from a collection called Grandfather's Album Opus 119, and it's a collection that not very many people are familiar with. So I hope I'm not putting you off by starting on a more obscure note here, but it's an excellent collection of romantic music that sounds really good, even though it's not incredibly complicated to learn, which is why I really like teaching it. The sheet music is over on imslp.org, and I will also link it on the blog post if you want to check that out, if this is a tutorial you'd like to play along with and learn. So let's get started. Since Alexander Gretchaninov isn't as well known as, say, Tchaikovsky, there isn't a whole lot of backstory to share with this tutorial, but we'll talk a little bit about it. What we can discuss is that this album was composed in 1929 when he was 65 years old, so well into his years already. So though Grandfather's Album falls squarely in the 20th century music era, it still has a romantic era feel to it just because that was Alexander Gretchaninov's main influence. There are 17 intermediate level pieces in this collection, and just a little bit more on Gretchaninov himself. He was a Russian composer, but he ultimately emigrated to the United States in 1939 after just a brief stint in France, and then he lived out the remainder of his years in New York. And just for some context, he was born in the mid-1800s, so he was in his 70s when he emigrated to the United States. Anyway, let's hop to the keyboard and take a listen to this piece, and then we will get into the tutorial bit. When learning a piece for the first time, we always start with the absolute basics. One of the first places to look for getting a sense of what the piece is going to be all about is the key signature. So in this one, we have two flats. We have a B flat and an E flat, and that's going to tell us one of two things. We're either in the key of B flat major or G minor, because both of them have two flats in the key signature. Now, the way that we would determine which is which is by looking at the first chord. We can see G, D, B flat. That's a G minor chord. So that's right away, probably 95% of the time, that's going to be what tells you what key you're in. And I don't have this up on the screen right now, but at the very end of the piece, which we'll look at later, the last chord is G minor, which is just another way to confirm what our key signature is. We also have a bunch of Italian to contend with. We have our tempo, which is moderato, ma con moto. The first word is easy, like moderato, play at a moderate speed. The rest of it means but with motion. So the full translation would be moderately but with motion. And we'll talk in a minute more about what that means, but let's look at this Italian as well, ben cantando. Basically, this means to play in a singing style. The ben is telling us to do it not just a little bit, but a lot. So a rough translation might be very singing. Another important and basic detail is scouring through the whole piece and finding its form. This is going to allow us to divide it and conquer it and make more sense of the music as a whole. We'll start by labeling the beginning section A. It's the beginning. A just means the beginning, part 1. Next, let's look for a place where the music really changes in rhythm, character, notes, or any of the combination of the above. It's actually really easy to find in this piece because of the double bar lines. They lead us right to the change, and we will label this section B. Since the right-hand pattern remains similar, so that doesn't change too much, the notes are different, but the overall pattern's the same, but the left hand changes really dramatically. And if you remember from the playthrough, the mood is also quite a bit different in this part. So that's another way we know that this is the B section. So now let's go look and see if we can find the return to the A section, or if it just stays different the whole time. A quick glance shows us that if we look right here, this is absolutely the same as the beginning. The biggest difference here is that we just have 4 bars instead of 8. So this is like a condensed A section, so we'll call it A1 because it's just a little different. Once you have the piece sectioned off into 3 parts, learning it in general just becomes way less overwhelming. One challenge of this piece is pulling off the extended left hand position. There are many, many tenths in this piece. Tenths is just a note span. Now, the vast majority of humans can't comfortably stretch a tenth, so we need to do 2 things to make this work. We need to swing our wrists and use the damper pedal. To a lesser extent, the damper pedal is not going to help us play the tenths, but it's going to smooth out any rough edges. But just make sure you're not relying on the pedal for your smooth playing. It should still sound smooth and connected without the pedal. But let's hop to the keyboard and look at how to do that. Swinging your wrists is one way that we can accomplish large and fast leaps on the piano. A lot of people tend to have really rigid and inflexible wrists when they play, keeping it locked in position and facing forward like this. And what happens when you have these large leaps with a large, look how tense my fingers have to get if I kind of keep my wrist locked in place. So we need to have a little bit of flexibility in order to play comfortably and accurately. One way to do this is to think of the middle note as a pivot. Each set of tenths, because if we're stretching from G to B flat, for example, that's tenth, it has 3 notes. So our first example is G, D, B flat. So D is our pivot note. So you're going to be using finger 3 on D in the middle, and this is going to be your center point to keep your hand in place. So when you reach with finger 5 to press the first note, finger 3 should still be hovering pretty much right on D, ready to go. And then when you reach from D to B flat, finger 3 kind of remains relatively in place while you swing towards that B flat with your thumb. Keeping finger 3 anchored in this way will help you swing your wrist from 5 to 1. And then play this tenth a little bit more effectively than you would if you were to just try to play with like a straight on. It's very difficult to reach like that. And what finger you use for pivoting is going to change. So sometimes it's finger 2, like in the next example when we're going from B flat, G to D. So in this case, you notice when I play it, I have finger 2 ready on that G to help me do a little bit of a wrist pivot. You really want to make sure your wrist stays flexible and use that middle note to help you with keeping your wrist flexible. One quick note about the pedal, which I already kind of mentioned briefly. As with most pieces, you'll want to use syncopated pedaling, which is a pedaling technique that we covered on the channel long ago. It's the most common way to approach pedaling, and if you're not really sure how to do that, be sure to check out that video. It basically just means you keep everything connected. So you lift you lift your foot when your hand presses down, and that keeps everything going smoothly. Let's get back to the Italian from the beginning of the piece. Moderato ma con moto. Moderately, but with motion. What exactly does with motion mean? This usually means that you want to play rubato, which literally translates to stolen time, and it refers to playing that's more rhythmically free. So, for example, you'd never be able to play with a metronome if you're playing rubato because the rhythm is just too flexible for that. I like to call rubato rubber band tempo in my studio because I feel like it helps people visualize what it's actually supposed to mean. It's a flexible tempo that can stretch and bend, but there's no set formula with how exactly it works. Not to get into too much of a rant about rubato, but I'm of the camp that believes that rubato is just way too often super overdone. So I don't like doing really, really dramatic rubato for the most part. It really depends on the composer. So even if I'm playing Chopin, I like to keep it fairly steady with just a little bit of bending instead of making it like overly dramatic, just because that's like from what I've read about Chopin and what he said himself about his own playing, that's kind of like how I believe he would have intended it to be played. But to each their own with this, and that's just my opinion. So I'll show you what I mean by that. See how it kind of just like a little bit slower when I got to the tail end there, and then for the second phrase, even more of a dramatic slowdown at the 4-bar mark, because again, we got a natural stopping point. Now this isn't a rule of rubato, I want to let you know, it's just kind of a starting point for you. Another thing that you can consider with rubato is it tends to sound natural to pick up speed about halfway through a phrase. So I'm going to just play that first phrase again. You can hear how I'm just accelerating a little bit before I fall back down in tempo again. And I'm going to do it again. Another thing too is oftentimes when notes move higher on the keyboard, it makes sense to play a little faster. And so if you're kind of moving upwards, it kind of makes sense to speed up a little bit. And if you're moving downwards, a lot of the times it makes sense to slow down a little bit. And again, these are just general guidelines to get you started with rubato. Just one more point before I send you on your way to try this piece. In the B section, our phrases get really short. They become 1 bar long and they become thus a little bit more abrupt. You'll also see 1 bar crescendos and diminuendos. So basically these are really expressive little phrases. This is where you're going to want to find the most motion and the most movement. It's really important that you keep these short phrases distinct from each other instead of blending them together. There's a little hesitation in between. I'm creating clear phrase breaks and physically lifting the notes so there's no sound lingering. I'm also using a little bit of rubato, slowing down at the end of each small phrase as I get quieter. You can kind of hear how I'm doing that. And that is all for today's tutorial. As I mentioned earlier, you can find the sheet music for this entire collection, the entire Grandfather's album, Opus 119, over on imslp.org, which you can find linked to in the blog post that goes along with this video. And we always put those links and stuff in the description bar, so definitely check that out if this is something that you want to learn and play along with. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Sorry, I have to keep like standing up and down on the piano bench to hit start and stop on the record, and it's winding me.